Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Max Siegel. Across from me is...
Santiago Ramones.
Hello, Santiago.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm asking you the question.
Oh, okay.
Who are you, and what do you do?
So I am a composer, podcast host, producer, songwriter, and performer. I think I got that right in the right order of my usual bio thing. So I put that intentionally in the order of the priority that I have those things for myself, or more as like a marketable thing. I think I'm probably more of a songwriter than I am a producer, but I think I want people to know that I am a producer so that I can get more jobs that way. So that's farther up on the list.
Okay, cool. What would you say people know you as? Mostly.
Yeah. If I received any feedback from anything at all, which I kind of don't, but fun side note, there are cats here and they do hilarious things. So we will probably often
start laughing.
Yeah,
randomly.
laugh at.
They were totally calm until 6 seconds ago.
Yeah.
I'm not joking.
That's how it
bit.
goes.
They know we're recording.
There's some energy in the air that something of importance is going on. And so now they've decided to
start freaking out.
Distort that. Anyways, while I myself am primarily a composer, I think probably people more know me for the podcast. It's a networking tool, and so probably more people see that, like I was on his podcast, or someone that I know was on his podcast, and so they probably know me better for the podcast. But hey, I'm a composer. I make music. Hopefully that will flip in the direction of I don't know if at some point like people listen to Joe Rogan and don't know that he's a comedian and just know him as a podcaster, or they're like, oh yeah, he's just a podcaster. What is this fear factor thing?
Yeah. I didn't know Joe Rogan was a comedian until after I knew he was a podcaster.
Sure.
So,
yeah, exactly. There you go.
Prime example. Like my order of Joe Rogan was podcaster, something MMA, and then comedian.
Exactly.
But
yeah. He does the. But this isn't a podcast about Joe Rogan.
Nope. You get the point being, you get very little say over what people actually think you do. But I am interested in musical Santiago.
Okay.
That's what I know more about. So how did you get started with the musics?
Yes. So there was just like a whole bunch of music in my house growing up, like even before I came to the US. Hey, by the way, I was born in Venezuela. Came here in 2001. Yeah, so I mean, my family's pretty musical, not in the traditional sense of like trained in music school or whatever, but like Venezuelan culture really values music a lot, and like it's like a point of pride, like, this singer and they're from here and they, this is from that album or something, and so like it permeates the culture really strongly, probably because it's a smaller country, but everyone has like pride in like, oh, that famous singer, they're from Venezuela. Sort of a similar thing like Canadians have. Canadians are always like, oh, that actor's Canadian, that singer's Canadian. But so probably there is where really my musical DNA is. But I started really doing music in elementary school, like more than just music class. I did Circle the State with Song, which is like a special like elementary school choir that you have to like audition for. And I made it. I was a soprano 1.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's become attached to my identity that I have a high voice. And so I try to like lead into that as much as possible for some reason, because if I don't have a high voice, then who am I? And so from there, I kind of skipped vocal stuff through middle school because I joined a band. I played trombone. I wanted to be a percussionist, but everyone wanted to be a percussionist, so I didn't get to be. And I feel like there's lots of times lately, and as I'm composing and making music, that I'm like, yes, the drums. And I love writing for drums, and that's probably because I was supposed to be a drummer and never got to be. But, you know, trombone is really fun. I don't play it anymore, but I think it's a really easy instrument to learn and a really difficult instrument to master. I feel like people say that a lot about everything. You can say that about guitar. But trombone, like, I feel like everyone's first thing that they get from trombone is like, oh, but how do you remember where to put the slide? And it's like, it's just muscle memory. There's a place. And then if you like dent your slide, then there's really a place because you know it in reference to where the slide gets stuck. But yeah, so I did that in middle school. Then in high school, I just pulled myself in every direction. And so I did choir, show choir, theater, and band. And I was a drum major in marching band. I was usually the highest chair, if not second chair or whatever, but I was pretty good, but not enough to like, I knew that I loved music, obviously, but I also didn't practice because I had enough like musical talent to like skate me by the necessity of what they require in high school. And then whenever I got to college, my idea was like, oh, I'll just like I want to. Radiohead's my favorite band. I just want to be Radiohead. And so I tried doing vocal performance, but never having had a voice lesson, I auditioned and they were like, nope, sorry, you could do music ed though, and like audition for that next semester. And so my first semester at UCO, I was like undeclared major, even though I was taking all music classes.
Gotcha.
And then, I took some voice lessons and then re-auditioned, did vocal music ed as like a backup. It's like, well, everyone needs a music teacher, so let's do that. I did that for 2 years. But like, it was always kind of stuck in my mind that I wanted to make music and compose music, and especially video games, because video games have been really important in my life. And so I was like, all right, I'll do the bachelor's in vocal music ed, and then I'll switch to production at ACM and do an associate's, and that'll be super short. And then I took a class at UCO called History of Video Game Music. And I was like, oh, right, this is what I want to do. Why am I not doing that? And so after that semester was over, I switched to ACM. And so I had 2 years of vocal music ed, which was like 4 music theory classes, 4 aural skill classes, 4 piano classes. And so my musical foundation was pretty strong. I'd also taken AP music theory in high school, but like it wasn't enough to like, I feel like everyone was just really confused during AP music theory, and everyone just tried their best. But that foundation helped me to get better. And I was like I was basically going to be a tutor for theory classes before I switched to production. Hi, friend. There's a cat on my lap. Everything's better with a cat in your lap. Yeah, I think is that enough to? I have a master's in music composition because I keep doing this to myself. Like a long time ago, I wrote a song about how much I hate school, and then I just kept doing school. Yeah. Go on with the more questions.
Yeah. So that's the next 3 questions are check.
Yes.
Let me see. How far through this did
Right.
we
Yeah.
get?
No. And I also know my podcast well enough to kind of lead into the areas that I already ask about.
You answer. So one of the things is, what is your biggest influences? You said Radiohead.
Yes.
That's probably number 1.
Yes.
But
it definitely is.
That's one thing I'm always really interested about with any musician. And
Yeah.
so can you expand on maybe what influence radio had on you more specifically, or maybe what other influences you might have as well?
Yeah. So the biggest arbiters of my musical taste are Jesus, my oldest brother, and my friend Libby, who like I had a crush on in high school, and so like, you know, as
That'll happen.
more middle school really, but like as a young budding pubescent child, you like base your entire identity off of girls.
Yeah. Whoever you have a crush on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely half of my favorite bands from high school are because I liked a girl who liked a band.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So I got Brand New and Modest Mouse from Jesus, and Radiohead definitely from Libby, but that and Death Cab for Cutie. That's another. So like the things that I was listening to then have kind of shaped my voice. Like my falsetto is almost entirely Tom York.
Yeah.
My kind of breathy head voice is entirely Ben Gibbard. So I mean, it's a lot of, and then probably my like screamish stuff. I don't do a lot of screaming, but I do that a lot from Brand New. But I write a lot of songs like Brand New.
Okay.
In the sort of lyrical sense, not always in the musical sense, but yeah.
Yeah. So can you expand on what about your songwriting you think you get from Brand New? I know you and I have talked about Brand New quite a bit.
Sure. I think that, I mean, I'll just say things that I like about Brand New and things that I try and get from that and put it into my songwriting. The way that Jesse Lacey combines storytelling with emotional explosion is something that I try to emulate. I do a lot of storytelling in my songs. That's probably also a lot from Death Cab. But the Venn diagram of letting out your emotions and saying something that might have some sort of start, middle, and end, that Venn diagram is I try and be in the middle of that. And so Brand New, I feel, does that really well. There's so many times when I'm like sad and I'll put on Brand New and it's just, he's just saying my feelings out loud with words. And if you haven't listened to Brand New, the amount of times that I rep them on the podcast, you should by now.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and just move along. What are important factors you think contribute to an artist's success?
Oh, geez.
You don't get to act like you're not prepared for these questions.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, well, I forget what questions I have. That's why I use the list every time I do the podcast. But Sure, I'll start in this order. First, being good at music. It's actually not. It's not necessary in every regard, but it helps a lot. And so there are lots of cases where just a very talented musician gets a light shown on them, and people are like, "Oh, whoa, okay," and then that drives them up, and that contributes to their success. But it's not entirely necessary. Some of the biggest, most popular artists, whatever, aren't the best singers or the best guitarists or the best whatever. It's how they present that and be themselves, which says to the next point, being unique or being oneself. How much an artist plays into their uniqueness, because and I see this more and more. I see new bands popping up in the local scene and old bands dying, and just like all of this happens all the time. So there's so many bands all the time. So there's so many clones of like, oh, hey, we love Panic at the Disco, so we started a band that sounds exactly like Panic at the Disco, which is cool. Panic at the Disco is really popular, but that already exists. So what you should do is, like, I think whenever people discover a new artist that they really like, they go, it's like this artist mixed with this artist if they did this.
Yeah.
And that's what gets people really excited. And so you got to be yourself. Take your influences. You can wear them on your sleeve, but like combine it and then do it like you would do it, not like your influence would do it.
Yeah.
And then the other part, sadly, comes to like marketing and management. I wish I had a manager, but like it's some artists don't market themselves well, and I feel like I'm one of them. But you need someone in your corner to be able to speak for you and be like, hey, they may not want to say this, but I will. This person's the shit.
Yeah.
And if you like take the time and listen to this or book them for the show, like we'll make some awesome stuff happen. And like money too. So like, and opportunity and stuff like that. Like I recently had this rant with my brother, Daniel, because he talked about Jacob Collier and how he's like groundbreaking and stuff. And he really is. But at the same time, he had the musical world handed to him. And that doesn't speak any less to the success of Jacob Collier, because clearly he is a marvel of a musician. But like both his parents involved in music at like the university level, they like gave him everything, and then like people discovered that, and it's a whole big thing built upon itself. And so an artist like myself, who is a poor immigrant from Venezuela, I can't quite reach those levels at the same rate that he did. And so he's going nowhere but up. And other people kind of have to grind. Not that he doesn't have to grind in his own way. Everyone's experience is their own, but like it's a different grind.
Yeah. Well, you kind of started that whole thing saying, oh, I'm going to lay these out in order of importance, but it almost more sounds like laying it out in order of how much control you have over each step.
Yeah.
Like you have the most control over your own talent, because provided you're not like struggling to find food, you can always practice.
Yeah.
And then, just the way that you went through those, I think makes a lot of sense. And it's not necessarily that those things are most important in terms of impact on likelihood of success, but it is a good way to look at it in terms of like, here are the things that you have more and less and less and less control over.
Right. So, and you can fight to like break away from those limitations And, you know, some people don't have the time to be able to practice all the time. But what little time they get, they make their stuff look good.
Yeah.
And having your stuff look good can do a lot for you as an artist.
Yeah.
Even especially nowadays, looking at that Instagram game, like if someone, you know, has professional headshots done every once in a while, like that looks good on you as an artist. And it kind of a little bit is of like playing a game of pretend. Like sometimes you have to pretend that you're balling.
Yeah.
So that you could be balling in the future.
Depends on what your brand is.
Right. Yeah.
You could start out living in the dirt and then get famous for being that artist who's living in the dirt. And then
exactly.
just eventually be pretending to live in the dirt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think
that's a weird charade that comes through country artists.
Yeah. There's or hip hop. Well, sometimes you get that. Sometimes you get the opposite. But you get, in all genres, really, you kind of get that. It's all kind of fabricated.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It depends how much you want to play that game.
Yeah.
And I don't like playing that game, which is kind of why I want a manager, because like
you want
I
someone
want
to play
someone else
it for
to play
you?
that game for me. Because it does bad things to my brain to live in that space all the time.
It's people love a rag to riches story, and it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easier sometimes to just find one than it is to make one, if that's your job, is to make people famous. But you know, there are plenty of manufactured rags to riches stories.
Yeah.
But
And it's kind of part of I mean, good on Taylor Swift for having her success, but she is a product of the machine.
100%.
Yeah.
But
she does write her own songs. I will give that to her.
And nobody who's ever, this is also part of the machine, but to some extent, there's always the famous people who people meet them, and then they're like, universally, this person's kind of a pain to be around.
Yeah.
And you never hear about that with her. So I don't know, maybe. But what is the goal or goals for your career?
I have I always do this with kind of everything, but I have like pragmatic goals and then like pie in the sky goals.
Yeah, of course.
So
let's start with the pie.
Yeah. Oh, start with the pie?
Start with the pie. Go big or go home, baby.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of said it earlier. It's like, I just want to be Radiohead.
Okay. You want to be the whole of Radiohead, but in a single person. Or do you just want to be Tom York?
I mean, sure. That would be nice.
It'd be a good consolation prize.
But it's more like I want to be able to be free to make art, have the resources to make my art, and then once I put it out, people listen to it passionately. And like, yeah, I mean, this is the like egotistical drive that every performer has, whether or not they say it out loud or So it's whenever Moonshaped Pool came out, which is Radiohead's most recent album, I went to my room, turned all the lights off, put my headphones on, and listened to it like twice. Mm-hmm. And I like pulled up the lyrics and was like, damn, this is so good. And I like absorbed it in like a whole thing, and it made my soul happy. And I want other people to do that with my music. That's the pie in the sky goal. Okay. I don't even really like need your money with that goal. I want your soul.
Okay.
I'm Satan.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want like a reverse Robert Johnson situation.
Sure. Yeah. But yeah, that's the big, I just want to be able to make music, make art, really, because it's more than music. It is art, and have people ingest it and understand it. I want to be understood. Mm-hmm. That's an innate human thing, but Yeah.
I'm glad I went with that part because I feel like you're the kind of person who's got like a lot of really clear answers for, oh, here's my 5-year goal.
Sure.
Here's my 1-year goal. And they're all very humble and they're all very pragmatic and useful and all that. And I'm like, what does Santiago's ego have to say about this though?
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, no, the pragmatic goal is it's every musician's pragmatic goal, which is just being able to make music for a living and not have to worry about the next check being the make or break thing for me to be able to eat tomorrow.
It's really everyone's pragmatic goal plus music.
Yes.
Like
that goal.
Make a living.
With music.
but do music. Yeah.
Yeah. And then everything in between is just kind of like, I mean, we all have like side jobs and hustles and stuff. So I am an audio engineer. Now I dabble in video. I want to compose for video games. That's the other like pie in the sky goal. I want to be able to like have game developers just come to me instead of me trying to pimp myself out all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
At the risk of running the podcast long or
we're already
not getting to things later. I want to go back a couple steps on the music for video games thing.
Yeah.
Like what are some influences for you there?
So
because I couldn't name a single video game composer.
Right.
And I don't know that most people can, even gamers. So.
I can name a lot of them because it's my other obsession. So probably my first like big favorite game was Prince of Persia.
Okay.
Which was Stuart Chatwood, I believe. And he played in a rock band that I don't remember their name right now, but he was like more popular as like a rock musician than a composer, and he did the soundtrack for the Prince of Persia games. Cat things going on. And I say that soundtrack not because it's one of my favorite soundtracks, because it's not, but because it was my first like favorite video game. But it was one of the first times that I like started noticing soundtracks in games. Mac just got clawed in the arm.
I got attacked by cats. The chair I'm sitting in got attacked by cats, and that was collateral damage. Anyway.
But then, so the first real soundtrack, Fable 1.
Oh, that's a good one.
Dude, it is... the main theme was composed by Danny Elfman, but then the rest of it was by Russell Shaw. And it's so magnificently British. It's so... like funny and charming, and that theme is just embedded in everything. It's just so magical. That score is just so like beautiful and so appropriate for everything. There's a lot of choirs in it, a lot of just really magical stuff. And then coming to now with what my favorite game is right now, which is still Transistor. That's Darren Korb, the composer. And I've been really into video games, or indie video games. I've been in video games. Indie games because they allow smaller teams to make a more interesting artistic vision without the compression of a corporation trying to make a whole bunch of money. Yeah. And so they're allowed to make art rather than make a product. And so Transistor was Supergiant's second game. And I actually recently watched a documentary over the creation of that game. And they made a game before called Bastion, which is really popular. And it had more of like a like an acoustic-y type feel. But then they were like, all right, with our second game, we want to make a science fiction game. And so it was very electronic, but like jazzy at times, like it was like electronic drum and bass sometimes and jazz and kind of all this mix of like distortion and cool beats that made for this really cool cyberpunk game. But it's cyberpunk without the like darkness. And the soundtrack and the art of that game and the story and everything about it is just like a really good, solid experience. It's not a perfect game, but it's just a work of art.
Yeah.
And so Darren Korb is probably my favorite game composer, followed by Disaster Piece, who did Fez, but he also did It Follows, which is a scary movie, but which I only watched because Disaster Piece did the score for it. Yeah.
Cool. I want to...
Wait, there is something I should say about this just in general. Sorry.
Okay. It is your podcast.
I think, yeah. What makes video game music more interesting than just like scoring a film or just making an album is that it's alive. It is interacting with the player. And so you get a lot more opportunities to create something really unique because it has to evolve with the player.
Yeah.
And that is, technology for it is getting better and better all the time. But like, I feel like the album is something that like, oh, here's this thing from start to finish. It sounds like this. But there's some scores that will, like video game scores will create whole new experiences every time that you play with it, and you might notice something different each time or something, or you can do different things with rhythm, whatever it might be. It can create an entirely different experience. More cat things are going on. Really just trying to get the cat not to chew on the cables. All right. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you earlier.
you interrupted yourself.
Yes, I did.
Well, the thought was going to be something along the lines of what do people not know about video game music, but you kind of...
Yeah,
I think you knocked it out.
That.
So it's good. My brain has a loading noise, and it's probably super annoying on the podcast, and I apologize.
That's what the D-Click plugin's for.
I think what is a hurdle that you've gotten over in the past, or what are you still working on?
Geez.
Hard left turn. Here we go.
Yeah. So I remember last night thinking about this question and just remembering that it was a question, but I didn't answer it in my head. So I think that, well, let's start with one that I've gotten over. I think that this is something for every musician. They see music theory as this big, scary monolith of knowledge that they will never surpass or never understand enough about. And I feel like I don't know everything about music theory. There's always a whole lot more to learn. I wish I did know more about like jazz theory, because there's some real funky stuff going on in those chords. But honestly, there was a point where I was like, I'm never going to understand this.
Yeah.
And now I do. And it took time and studying, and something else, it takes playing to learn. Yeah. Like, I feel like there's this mental separation that happens whenever people think of music theory as like, oh, it's just this, it's math for music. Yeah. And it is, but like you see the numbers whenever you apply it in the music. And it helps. It's a tool. I heard a quote recently from Victor Wooten that, like, people don't hire me for my music theory skills. Music theory should only come into play whenever there's a problem.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, you should just be making music. And that's why Victor Wooten is the best bassist in the world. But yeah.
I think it's really interesting. And maybe I'm wrong or putting words in your mouth or something, but I think you mentioned like, oh, people think that music is this big scary monolith, and like maybe part of it is like kind of accepting that it is in a way. Like, I mean, like there is this huge giant world of knowledge that you can spend your entire life working on, and you'll never complete it. But you kind of get that and accept it, and then you sort of give your permission to not understand things, and then you start to make progress quicker than you might expect or realize.
We're always learning.
Yeah.
A hurdle that I'm still working on is probably it's not quite a musical hurdle, but it applies to music and it's I fight with my ego a lot in both directions. So there are times where I'll be working on music and I'm just like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. And why am I doing this? And why did I waste my life getting so many music degrees whenever this is pointless? I'm never going to be noticed for this. And then there's the other side, which is like, well, Kanye West has nothing on me. Like, I got, like, look at this shit. This is so good. This is a fucking banger. And if I had that kind of money, I would be famous already. That's like, that's the nonsense that is like the super, like, mega ego brain.
Yeah.
And I fight that guy all the time in both directions because it's like, all right, slow down there, buckaroo.
Yeah.
Like, but you do have to have a level of confidence. And I do think that, you know, there's stuff that I hear all the time that I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah.
And that does give me confidence because it's like, all right, I know I can do that. And if I keep working at it, like maybe I'll be noticed for it someday. Yeah. And then, yeah, there's the times where I'm like, all right, why did I waste my life doing music? I'm never going to make any money off of this. This is stupid. But like, you got to pull yourself up and be like, no, you can do this.
Do it anyway.
You like stuff that you've made is more than good enough. There's people making lots of money off of music that is worse than yours. And that's cool because you know the possibility is there. Yes, it can be disheartening because that does exist, but you can do it. If they can do it, you can too.
Yeah. Do you ever do you ever feel like sometimes hypermaniac Santiago writes something and then like hypomaniac or sorry, let me reword that because I screwed it up. You ever feel like hyper ego Santiago writes something and then hypo ego Santiago like works with it later and there's a conversation between those two things? Or
I think it's a funny thing because I feel like that judgment process probably happens a little later in the process for some reason. Like there are times where I'm making something and I'm like, ooh, I like this. And that's kind of where it needs to stay. And then kind of after I've like gotten somewhere with it, I'll stop and go, cool, this is a good direction to go. And that is kind of where that comes in, where hyper ego Santiago will like, oh yeah, this is dope, keep going. And that does help me complete things.
Yeah.
And then the times where like stuff isn't working or like I had a vision and then in messing with things too much, it like I lost the vision and I'm just like, I don't even know what this wants to be anymore. And that's where the like self-deprecating demon comes in. It's like, you're shit. Why are you wasting your time? And so, yeah, that conversation is had kind of later in the process after I've made something. But usually if I'm sitting down to make something, I'm already in a state that wants to create.
You're not really judging as you go. You're just making things.
Yeah, and I guess you can take that as advice, but like try and just make things first before you judge things. Or the moral of the story in Shrek, don't judge people before you get to know them.
Sure. Don't judge your music.
Don't judge your music before you get to know it.
Before you get to know it. Good. Yeah. I like that. I'm going to try to skip around a little bit in essence of time. Seems like...
I mean, we can go long. This is episode 200. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Thing.
Okay.
The last episode 200 was 3 hours long.
The last episode 200?
The last 100th episode.
Is there like a whole other 200 episodes I don't know about? Because I need to know. No.
Time is a flat circle, Mac.
Time is a flat circle. Time cube. Okay, so what is selling out?
Having heard so many people answer this question.
I was tempted to skip it because this is the question where answers annoy me the most often.
Really?
And I couldn't even tell you why. It just, I roll my eyes during answers for this question more often than answers for any other question. But you seem to think it's really important. So I'm curious what you have to say about it.
I think it's more that other people find it to be important. And so whenever we have that conversation, people realize how less important it is. Okay. So, I said the like musician goal earlier, which is just making enough money to survive.
Yeah.
Everyone is reaching for that. Sometimes people reach a certain point to where they don't realize that they've already reached it.
Yeah.
And then they just keep going. And so it's like, all right. And that's kind of the crux of capitalism. But like, oh, just infinite growth. That's a possibility. Let's keep doing that. And so I don't necessarily fault artists for reaching for infinite growth. But there is going to be something lost in the process.
Yeah.
And I think that what we can define as selling out is betraying your values for monetary gain.
Yeah. Like the real goal is one wants to make enough money to comfortably live making their art.
Yeah.
And there might come a point where you can make more money making something that's not
your
art.
Your art.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, that's why I like Panic at the Disco's first album, but I don't like the rest of the stuff because I can tell that it was like, all right, this one was a band, and then it just progressively became Brendan Urie, and to where it was literally just Brendan Urie, and now it's just like a pseudonym for the man.
Yeah.
And I feel like the newer music does kind of betray the essence of what the initial project was.
Yeah.
Same with Fall Out Boy. It's kind of one reason I hate Green Day, because like they're kind of known as like, oh yeah, rebellion, but it's like it's the you're kind of not doing it, because like there was a Green Day song playing at the gym the other day, and I was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Because like that's the opposite of punk. But yeah, that's
yeah. I think a part of that whole conversation on selling out too is there's a distinction between what the audience thinks an artist's art is and what the artist thinks their art is, you know?
Yeah.
So like Green Day, for example, I think you go back and listen to Green Day's early stuff. Most of it is just about like dicking around, being a young kid.
Yeah.
And like being lazy and not caring about anything and masturbating at home.
Yeah.
You know? And I think in large part, the idea of Green Day as like punk icons is because that's the scene that they managed to come up in.
Right.
You know? So I don't tend to feel as much like Green Day sold out because I think that that's more a thing that got placed on them, that particular set of values because of the scene that they kind of came up in. But I don't know. I think, and maybe Brendan Urie is a similar situation. Like for some artists, and this is true for a lot of pop artists, like their art is their performance.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Or their art is their lyrics, and their art might be melody, and everything else is just
a
means to an end to getting the other stuff out. And I don't know.
Yeah. And the other thing is like getting to know the artists a little bit more. Kind of a pie in the sky goal for this podcast is actually like, I'd like to have Taylor Swift on because of the nature of the beast, she doesn't get to have genuine conversations. It's all like this machine to try and be something and say the right thing. And that's like the opposite of this podcast. I'm trying to get to the root of people. Yeah. And so I want to have her on and have a genuine conversation.
The goal would be to get her on in a perfect world where she would talk about...
Where she would actually talk and not do the face.
Yeah. Which maybe after a while it gets hard to turn off the face. I don't know.
That's... And I mean... I'm not in that level of the world of that world. So like, I don't know how hard that does become. Yeah. So yeah.
It's really interesting.
Oh my gosh. So many cat things going on.
There are only 2 cats, but they sound, they're like coyotes.
Yeah.
They sound like 40 cats.
Yeah. See, now the listeners are probably going to want to hear the cats because they're probably not hearing them.
There's a podcast I really like. Called Delete This. It's this married couple going through the husband's Twitter account every week and reviewing the news of the world via his Twitter account. And they have a very old cat. And a feature of the podcast is at least once per episode, they try to get a very close-up recording of the cat purring.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
We may try to
just
insert that at the end. If we can get
a mic on them because they're everywhere.
Well, one just about passed out on you a little bit ago.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
I was vamping so you could pull up the questions.
Separating art from the artist. Do you?
I do not.
You do not. Okay.
Because at some point I have no choice but to have that in my brain as I'm listening to it.
Yeah.
It's not my fault that you did terrible things. It's yours.
Yeah.
And the fact that I heard about it has now seeped into your music and it hurts what I can now absorb from your art. So the usual prime example is Kanye West. He's not like a terrible like person. He's just an unlikable person.
Yeah.
But even that is enough to like, I don't feel like it anymore.
Yeah.
Just because like I don't want to be supporting that in whatever way that means.
Yeah.
And then like the bigger ones with like Michael Jackson now that like I probably haven't heard Billie Jean in a while. And next time I do hear it playing over some speakers, I will probably not think, oh, man, what a banger. I will probably think that man was likely a pedophile.
Yeah.
And it sucks that, like, you know, we're losing something out of it because it was very important to all of us. But at the same time, you got to kind of put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
If you're going to say that like this kind of behavior is wrong in society, then keep that going throughout the rest of it. And so don't support that behavior.
Yeah.
And yeah.
You can't just say it's wrong unless you're really good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like fees are legal if you're rich.
Yeah.
Because all you have to do is pay the fee.
Yeah.
Or fine. Fine is the word I was looking for.
Fines are just price tag on crimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can speed if you're super rich.
Yeah.
It's fine. You pay the ticket, whatever. It's nothing. So, I mean, we can't do that with morality because
any more than we already do.
Yeah, it actually affects the world, and we're making the world a worse place if we allow it. So,
Okay.
I try and do that.
Yeah, I think it's a totally legitimate.
Yeah, which
answer.
is why I have a hard time listening to Brand New's second album, because that was about the time that he was doing the thing. And do you know about this? I've talked about it on the podcast.
We've mentioned. Well,
okay, yeah.
It may not be. It may be a thing that you mentioned on the podcast, and I thought we talked about it.
Yeah,
because that's how podcasts.
Yeah, yeah. I've mentioned on the podcast. He solicited nude images from underage girls around that time, but he like went to therapy and like dealt with it with his wife and like tried talking to the victims and stuff. I don't know if he like did enough. That's kind of more for the victims to say, but he did enough for me to forgive him.
Yeah.
And so I think that I can still listen to Brand New, just not in that time period where he was okay with doing that.
Yeah. I think that that's really interesting. I think there's a harder line, maybe version of that, where you could say it's not okay until the victims come out and say, hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
Or it's not okay no matter what, so.
Right.
Even where you're at, there's a little bit of a
give
to it.
I think for me, it is a little bit more of like I don't get to choose if the victims forgive the person.
Yeah.
I'm in control of my forgiveness of that person.
Yeah.
Because while they didn't necessarily wrong me, they did in doing the thing that I don't like.
Yeah.
And so I can forgive the people for myself, but I can't like forgive the person and then tell the victims that they should also, because that's not mine to control. Yeah.
Getting into like sort of a meta conversation of the podcast.
Yes.
How does that? I've listened to a ton of episodes of this thing, and you get answers all across the board to that question. And what is your feeling about people who answer it way on the other side of the spectrum? Who are like,
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand that like music especially is really impactful in our lives. There are works of art that have like shaped who people are. And so I don't blame people for being like, this was too important in my life for me to not. Or I understand the mentality of, well, they weren't doing this wrong thing when they made the thing. Or the thing itself exists independently of the person
who made it.
I understand that argument. I disagree with it, but like I understand why people have that position. And so it's not like I'm gonna, yell at someone for disagreeing with me on that, but I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. It's music is important to people in ways that
not much else
a recipe isn't. Yeah.
Okay. I'm tempted to drill a little deeper on that.
You can.
So
this is your podcast.
Is it my podcast? Would it be safe to say then that you're not so much responding to like in your mind some like moral truth of the universe so much as it's knowing the artist did the thing affects your experience of the art to the point where you don't want to engage with it.
It's a little of both.
See, there's a part of you that feels like it is wrong to listen to the music of somebody who's done something really terrible.
Yeah. And we'll kind of get to it later when we talk about morality. But like, I do think that there are, in a way, objectively good things and objectively bad things. And so for us to be hypocritical in that sense too, is that we're allowing ourselves to make the world a worse place. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of why I hold that line so strongly. But yeah, I mean, it comes from within myself, but then it does actually have repercussions on the real world. The more people are like, on Michael Jackson's pedophilia, the more they can be towards other people's pedophilia. And that's why the Republicans were very okay with going all full steam on a pedophile on that one election. I forget the guy's name. He's not worth naming. I also have a funny position on pedophilia anyways, but that's a later thing.
I feel like I can't let I have a funny position on pedophilia go, Santiago.
Fine, let's do that tangent.
We can save it for, is there going to be an episode 2 for this?
This is just, we're going.
We're just going?
Yeah. I feel like since it is episode 200, it can be
4 hours long and it's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
I may need to turn on the heater because I forgot to when we came in.
Okay, yeah, we can pause whenever you want.
Start on that because I can't let I have a I have a funny thing on pedophilia. I can't let that go.
Fair enough. And this kind of comes from Chris Ryan, who wrote a book called Sex at Dawn, where he talks about sexuality in prehistory. And so how humans have kind of evolved to be sexual as this species. So he kind of talked about it in one episode where he said, he has a podcast. He said that, like, why are we so demonizing on pedophiles if it's not actually their fault that they developed this sexual preference? Mm-hmm. And so it seems like a thing that, like, if someone turns themselves in for, like, having child pornography, should their sentence be lighter than if they, like, molested a child? Mm-hmm. And yes, because they didn't actually act upon this urge. They, like, tried some way of treating it. And so something that Chris Ryan talked about on this podcast is that there's, like, a law that says if a therapist has, like, a client that says, oh, well, I don't know, I kind of am sexually attracted to underage people, the therapist is, like, kind of required or compelled to turn them in, which, like, betrays the whole point of the therapy. Because why aren't they allowed to get help for this? This is clearly a bad thing. So they should be able to, for one, talk about it and try and deal with it, because by talking about it, they're trying to not act upon this thing. Mm-hmm. And then the other weird part is that, like, how can we help? Mm-hmm. And that's, I don't have answers on that. I don't know enough about it to talk about it, but in the same way that video games actually help reduce violence because people have an outlet for that violence, instead of actually committing that violence upon the world, they do it within a virtual world and it helps. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure there are many school shooters that have been abated by playing video games. Obviously, not all of them have, because there are still school shootings, but it is a sense of that, like, if we do that, we can help. I don't know what the answer is to that on the pedophilia side, but like, you know, there shouldn't be child pornography, obviously, but like, I don't know. There's animation, I guess. Like, I don't know what that might mean, but to claim that something is unanimously bad and there's no redemption from it means that we're actually just creating more of the thing that we hate because they don't have an outlet for it and they are going to continue doing bad things upon the world rather than like dealing with it in some sort of therapeutic sense.
It sounds like a version of the pedophilia is a disease argument.
Okay.
You know, which I think gets used. I don't know if this legitimately, how often this legitimately gets used or how many people actually believe this, but there's sort of there's this thing that happens a lot online where someone will post a meme where they present an opinion that maybe nobody actually has, and then they argue against it. And maybe this is one of those things, but there's a version of the pedophilia as disease argument that's like sort of like equating it to homosexuality in the sense that it is another sexuality, and so maybe it should be accepted to some degree.
I mean,
but
there's a conversation to be had.
Yeah.
I think is the biggest thing. And the hard thing about it is that socially we're not allowed to have the conversation.
It's
like
studying weed. It's like it's like studying weed, and that it's like it's hard to really have an intelligent conversation about a thing that wherever you stand on the issue clearly needs to be addressed by society.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're not allowed to talk about it.
Another thing that Chris Ryan quotes from other people, but it's like we can see the places in society where the most progress is going to be made in the places where people aren't allowed to talk about. So where the biggest taboos are the places where we need to grow the most.
Yeah.
And so that comes with sexuality, that comes with psychedelics, that comes with spirituality. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I do this podcast is because I want us to be able to at least talk about spirituality in an environment that isn't going to judge you for it.
I hope you're okay that I pursued that. I felt like
I'm open to talking about anything. However many subscribers I lose because of that, let's have a conversation about it instead.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point of the Santiago Gets Interviewed episodes. It's like, there's a few things you said already where it's like you talk about these things once a week for 200 weeks ish.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, I hadn't ever heard you like put it which makes sense. You don't want to like argue with your guest.
I'm trying to
draw something out of them rather than blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, no. And that would make every episode like twice as long. So
of course,
sometimes I'll inject a little bit of an opinion if it seems like we agree. But most of the time I'm just letting them say their piece.
We're almost through half the questions.
Sweet.
This was where I wanted to go before you said, hey, I have this weird thing about pedophilia. We were talking about selling out, or no, it was the conversation about
separating art from the artist.
Separating art from the artist. And you started on this thing about how like failing to view the art and the artist in connection with each other can make the world worse. So flipping that over, can music make the world better, and in what ways?
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely. I think that is a question I have on there, or if not,
more or less.
Yeah. I think that all art can make the world a better place, because even if it's not actively doing the thing, it inspires people to make the world a better place. And that's just as important. Like if people aren't inspired to make the world a better place, then no one's going to make the world a better place. So I think that it is kind of up to us as artists, musicians, creators to put that goal out into the world. It's a goal of mine, at least. I write a lot of sad music, not because I'm a sad person, but because I want the world to improve. And by pointing out, hey, look, this is a sad thing, it allows us to think about it. And in that same way, like, have a conversation. And so the more that we're thinking about these things, the more that we're talking about it and exploring it and getting different perspectives, the more we can connect with each other and take action and make the world a better place. Yeah. There's a reason why Rage Against the Machine was so popular, because it really tapped into this anger that we all had about the government. So, and still have, obviously. In some cases in the wrong direction. But yeah.
So on that, I think that what you just put really beautifully and succinctly is probably an opinion that most people hold, that music can make the world a better place, and music can make people better people, or art in general can make people better people. What are your thoughts on the flip side of that, beyond the issue of like separating the art from the artist? But sometimes I feel like people are less open to the idea that music can make the world a worse place, or art can make the world a worse place, or can influence people to do worse things. Like,
I think that there's always like the creation of the art, and then there's like the judgment of the art, and like the aftermath of it. We should always have a conversation about it. So even if there is just like, you know, there's rock bands that spew like Nazi slogans, and that's like a whole subgenre in culture and whatever the Klan does. And that does inspire action. It does inspire people joining the Klan, or the more solidification of those opinions. And I don't know if I can say whether or not that art should or shouldn't exist, but I will say that we should have a conversation about it, and that we should be looking at it. Because whenever we go, oh, this thing is bad, shut it down, in the same way that I said in the pedophilia conversation, we're really just letting it grow in the darkness. Who is it that, is it the Washington Post or the New York Times or something? Democracy dies in darkness. One of their slogans, which is funny because they occasionally say wrong things.
Well,
like
everyone,
very false things.
Yeah,
everyone falls prey to that. But like, you know, we need to talk about it. We need to put these things to light and have more conversations about it, so that, oh, is this art actually like making the world a worse place? Let's see in what ways it is. And we can talk about it so that the world doesn't become a worse place. These things should be allowed to exist, but we should also gauge them and deal with them as humans rather than shut things down.
Yeah.
That's a broader conversation too.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that you have that question in there as like the positive turn at the end of a thing.
Yeah.
And then I went and took it back.
Yeah, no, I like that.
So I want to try this to flip the mood around.
Yeah. I hope that can be heard. We'll see. Oh.
Lindsey Buckingham, everybody.
Yes. What you just heard was the cat.
Okay. So,
and it was purring, and then it rubbed its face on the microphone. With wonderful, wonderful sounds to hear.
If they're going to be on the podcast, they may as well make a contribution instead of just make a racket. What is the... Oh, I'm excited. Oh, wait. No, we got to hit one of these before we move on. No, we got to hit two because I like the last two on this section.
Okay.
I'm going to flip them, though. What advice do you have for musicians?
Kind of the things that I said with what contributes to your success. So, like, be you, first and foremost. Keep going. And do something new to you. Yeah. It might not be new to the world because it's always like a really disappointing thing whenever you're like, oh, look at this cool thing. I've never heard this before. And someone else is like, oh, that's just like this. You're like, God damn it. I thought I was being cool, or I thought I discovered this thing. But just make it anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's new to you and it's going to drive you to new foundations, new beginnings, new whatever. Yeah. Keep doing the thing. Spiral out, keep going.
There you go.
Yeah. That's not my quote.
No. Okay, cool. What's something that now this might be hard as a person who talks into a microphone for 2 hours every week. Yes. What is something that people don't maybe know about you?
Maybe the sword fighting thing.
The
the
sword fighting thing?
Yeah, I don't talk about it a whole lot because it's kind of dorky.
I thought you were going to go with the cosplay thing, and I was like, I think people know about the cosplay thing.
Yeah, well...
But I don't know about the sword fighting thing.
Sure. Yeah, I like sword fighting. It's a fun exercise. It's a way of engaging all of the muscles in your body rather than just like the ones that you do at the gym. It's hella cardio but it's also not quite as exhausting as being like in an actual fist fight.
Yeah.
Because like 30 seconds of that will just wear you the fuck out. Mm-hmm. Whereas you can go for a while with a sword fight because there's some distance in between you.
Yeah.
I don't spar with actual swords. I have foam swords that I keep in my trunk for if I tell someone that like, oh, I do sword fighting, they're like, really? And I was like, yeah, I have some in my trunk. You want to like
whack each other with sticks?
And that's the fun thing about it too, is that like anyone can just kind of like, I hand you a sword, I'm holding a sword, and then like try to hit me.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Yeah. So is it like a particular discipline, or is this just like I do LARPs or?
No, I think that LARPing is just beyond my extent of being comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe I should try it, and it would be a lot more fun than I think. In the same way that like acting would be.
Yeah.
But I don't follow any specific discipline. I think that for me at least, it's not about the discipline for it. This is just something. It's just a hobby that I have for fun, and so I don't need to muddy it up with like rigor. Mm-hmm. There is a style that I kind of mostly reflect, which is like European rapier style.
Okay.
But like, some situations call for like, here's a kendo type of move, which is the Japanese sword style. Or sometimes you gotta like throw a good, two-handed thing in there, and that's more like German style. So like, I know enough about it to like
be dangerous,
to have conversations about it and notice. And really, I just have like a group of friends that we do it every once in a while.
That's awesome.
And we like talk about it too, but like most of the learning that I've done on it is just through doing it, which is kind of what you can do with music too.
Yep.
But sword fighting is just a fun way of getting that. I mean, we're dudes. We have just like violent energy pent up inside us, and it's a fun way of doing it.
It was for the Lions. What else were you gonna do?
Or else you're gonna like rip someone's head off one day with all this pent up rage. Yep. So like just let some energy out. And like go to the gym, run, lift weights, whatever it might be for you, but also do some activity that is like different,
like a simulation of violence of some sort.
Yeah, because going to the gym is like, it's boring. That's why we like, if you go to the gym without your headphones, you're like, oh, I can't do this. Yeah. So like doing an actual thing is a much more fun way of getting the energy out of your body.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Go figure. You're knocking these out of the park.
Thank
you. Okay. Part two.
The thing.
What is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
Okay.
Or as you used to word the question, that I really liked.
Yeah.
God? Question mark?
No, that's actually
that's the next one.
I actually used to ask, what do you believe?
Oh, that's
which
right.
Is so
no, that's a little too.
Yeah, I know, and that's. There were some people that like
you can start getting Descartes in a hurry.
Yeah.
If you just go, what do you believe?
Or just what?
Yeah.
But
so what is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
I am very spiritual and not religious. If we have to put definitions on things,
we don't.
I am an atheist. But the thing is that like the way that I structure belief in my mind is more based on probability. And so it's not that like this thing is true or this thing isn't true, but like there are things that are probable enough that you can just say that.
Yeah.
And so like running the numbers in my head and the information that I've gathered, God, I don't think so. But I grew up Catholic, and it played a very significant role in my life then, enough to the point to where, like, I've been with Sable for a very long time, and there was a point where I was like, I think I want to be a priest, and our relationship has to deal with that. And we, like, got past that, and I didn't want to be a priest, but it was important enough in my life that I had considered that at some point. And the like biggest like Catholic experience I ever had was at a conference where there were a bunch of like, it's an arena filled with Catholic teenagers, and it's called adoration, and they bring out the Eucharist, which is, according to Catholic belief, Christ is in that piece of bread. I'm trying to say this without sounding ridiculous, but I have a little too much atheist bias now.
Yeah.
And at that conference, it was in Arizona, I like got on my knees and wept and thanked Jesus for all of the things that he's done in my life, for keeping my mom alive whenever she had cancer, and all of the things that I was grateful for. And that was I don't deny that I had that experience. I'm not saying that experience was false, because it wasn't. I really felt those emotions. And I don't think I'm incapable of those emotions even now.
More just questioning where they ostensibly come from,
and so the way that I kind of fell out of it, which I guess I can tell the story this way, but if you actually listen to the first 3 episodes of this podcast, is actually this story.
Okay.
So I was asking questions already, just because like the way that Catholicism tries to defend itself from more information is by like teaching its followers apologetics. And so I had like gotten into apologetics because I wanted to like defend the faith as much as possible. And those answers just weren't cutting it for me. So I kept asking questions, but I was a very devoted Catholic, enough to the point to where I brought Sable into Catholicism. She, I mean, she wanted to do it, but I was obviously a very strong influence on that. And so like she took like the classes for it, and I was her sponsor. And even in those classes, I was asking like edgy questions in one way I was trying to like satisfy that part in myself, but like the face value for it was like, oh, I want you guys to like learn all the answers to these hard questions because you're diving into this world. And I was just like, I don't like these answers. And so at some point, Sable and I weren't really even going to Catholic church anymore. We were going to like Life Church, and I was already kind of like meh on all of it anyways, but I was just like following along. And a lot of the times I would just like watch these sermons and just like point out, like poke all the holes in it in my head. And there was a point where I was in the shower. I was listening to Catch-22.
The book?
Yeah. Okay. On audiobook.
Yeah.
And it was the scene where they're on a bombing mission and their plane gets hit by flak, and Yossarian, the main character, had just learned how to like patch people up with this like terrible first aid class. And one of the guys there had gotten hit by that flak, and he was like on the floor saying, I'm cold. And Yossarian goes to him and like sees the wound on his leg and like patches it up real quick. Sweet. You're going to be fine. It's going to be great. But he's still like, I'm cold. And so he opens his flak suit and sees that there's just a huge, like the flak actually went across him and his guts are spilling out. And the thing that was holding his guts in was the suit. And so he just puts the parachute over him like a blanket and says, it's going to be okay. And at that moment, I just thought, there's no Satan. It's just us. We're doing this. And like, yeah, Catch-22 is fiction, but like worse things happen in war. Worse things happen in basements of houses that we don't know what's going on. Worse things happen in third world countries, and it's not Satan. There's no enemy out to get us. It's just us. We're doing this. We shape the world. We can make it better or we can make it worse. It's just us. And that kind of I spiraled out. And put a lot of turmoil on our relationship. But like we've reached a place where we understand each other. With Sable, that is, obviously. Yeah. But however, in the first, wave of whenever someone first becomes an atheist, you read all the books, God's Not Great, The God Delusion, and The End of Faith. The great heavy hitters of that, which are really, really good books. I do find Richard Dawkins to be a smug prick, and he needs to calm down. But Sam Harris is my favorite of those. And I still like his arguments are pretty rock solid, and I don't have anything like, there are some things that I kind of disagree with him on, but like he's pretty rock solid. So it's like, I got you, Sam Harris. Yeah. And so that's kind of where a lot of that stands. And because of Sam Harris, I've been open to more spirituality rather than just like, nope, the world is just particles and molecules and there's nothing else.
Yeah.
No, we are interconnected beings. There are networks of things that we don't realize. Our bodies are picking up more input than we really know. And science is like, it's trying to understand as much as it can, but like there's stuff that we don't know yet. And there are ways in which we are interconnected and things that we can't explain. And so if you were to tell me like, oh, my house is haunted, this weird thing happened. Yeah. I'm not going to say like, there's no ghosts. That's where my like initial inclination is. But like,
yeah,
you can keep going and tell me more about it. And, like, honestly, I don't know. And so like, I think that spirituality is really important in my life because I'm constantly acknowledging how interconnected we all are. In fact, just recently, Milo Sonder, the last person I had on the podcast, talked about what the word Sonder means, which is like the feeling whenever you see someone else that you don't know and you realize that they have a whole life experience like you do. Not similar to yours, but there's a whole life in there that you haven't experienced, and that's every other person around you.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. But the thing is that like every time that you drive by someone or you bump into someone at the grocery store or whatever it might be, there's a whole network of things going on that we don't know. But what you do affects that person, and what they do affects you and every other person. We're all one big mob organism, whether we acknowledge it or not. And I think the world would be a better place if we did acknowledge that. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's cats fighting and stuff, but like, yeah.
I really like that. I think a lot of times with that question, people kind of land on what's the role of spirituality or religion, and they go, oh, well, here's my history with spirituality and religion.
Right.
And they go, and now I am here, and that's kind of the end of it. And
yeah.
What I like to hear is like, well, what is the role of it in your life now?
Yeah.
And today? And how does it actually affect your thinking and your...
And I've recently been talking to kind of say even more to now. I've recently been talking to a friend who I'm going to get him on the podcast soon. I want to. He's really into the occult. And what I've come to find is that occultism is very badly misunderstood. Yeah. And it's more metaphor than it is literal or ritual or spirits or whatever. It's extremely metaphorical and symbolic. But the thing is that those symbols really do affect our life. And not in and that discussion of literal and figurative or metaphor and there's a lot more layers to that than we think.
Yeah.
And these conversations with my friend have allowed me to kind of open myself to that and think, oh, like, it's not just like the concept of God or demons or a demon is not necessarily like there's an actual spiritual entity that like inhabits a person, but the idea of a spiritual entity inhabiting you does change your behavior. And so if you create that idea in your mind, it will affect your behavior. And there are rituals that we perform every day or rituals that we have in our culture that we don't even really acknowledge as ritual or talismans that we charge with our energy. And this is funny vocab words to be coming from an atheist. But like my wedding ring is a talisman of our relationship. And it's been charged through the 10 plus years that we've been together. And whether or not it actually has any magical energy or not, doesn't matter. It has energy to me, and it has energy to Sable. And that's a real thing. Is it just a carbon fiber ring that glows whenever it gets UV light? Yes, which is pretty neat. But it's also a talisman of our relationship, and it has much more value to it than just that. So that's a level of spirituality that I feel like a lot of materialist type atheists close themselves off to, but are actually taking part in all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely need to get whoever that is on the podcast because I want to hear that conversation.
Yes.
Okay. What is your definition of God?
Cool. So I feel like I've explained the question on the podcast before, but I like explaining it because it's fun. It used to just be God ?
Yeah.
But it's bad to have interviews with yes or no questions because it allows the guest to just say yes or no. And that's not what I want.
Yeah.
I want you to go on this long rant about whatever and then like, sorry, did I answer the question? And I'm
Which
like, yes.
God ? Only works for a specific kind of person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your definition of God? One presumes already that there is a God. And so if they don't believe in God, they go, well, I don't believe in God, so it's not blah, blah, blah. But if, then this. And then the other side, of course, is if they believe in God, they'll just define God. So that being said, I don't believe in God. However, if I were to describe God within my own sphere of beliefs, I guess more of like a Gaia type thing. God is the universe. Everything that exists and doesn't exist and has existed, and that we don't know exists is everything. And we're everything. You're everything. I'm everything. You're God. I'm God. We are the universe experiencing itself. Here's Tom with the weather.
There've been a lot of references of a particular kind in here.
That was a second Tool reference.
I was hoping you wouldn't say the band name and just see who gets it.
Yeah. Although that's technically wow. Yeah. Now I'm blinking on the name too. Bill Hicks. There you go.
There you go. I kept wanting to say Bill Burr, and I was like, no, that's not it. He just yells at fat people on stage. That's wrong guy. Cool. Did you answer the question? Did you have more to say on that?
No. I guess I'll answer a little bit more in the realm of if I don't know. I don't think that it seems likely that the God of the Bible is the God.
Yeah.
Because if so, then the Bible also claims that all of your morality needs to come from this being. And my intuition shows that this being's morality makes me really uncomfortable.
Suspect at best.
Yeah. So I don't really want, like, if that is the God, I don't want his heaven. Yeah, I'll gender it. Because out of just sheer pettiness and principle, send me to hell. God damn it. Because I don't want that to be the criteria to go to heaven. So yeah, I'm good. Yeah. I don't need it. And we can create heaven ourselves.
Yeah.
This is all we got.
Okay.
Cool.
I like that.
Take that, Pascal's wager.
Is free will an illusion?
Yes.
How?
Thank you. Same thing. I don't like having yes or no questions, but that it's hard to do that one.
No, the how is the accomplishes the goal.
Yes, I think that we are affected by our genes and our environment, and that's what creates us, in the same way that if you raise a cat, because we have these examples right in front of us, if you raise a cat in a abusive environment, it will flee from people. In that same way, we are shaped by our environment. And if your parents, there's an actual example of this in World War II. The Nazis cut off all resources to this one town in Poland, and so they were like starving. And what they found is that women that were pregnant, or children who were in the womb at this time, would develop a higher probability of diabetes or obesity, because in utero, their genes, this is an example of epigenetics, their genes switched on to go, hey, food is scarce, so we have to take in what we can get. And so once they go out into the world and start taking in nutrients, their body's like, gimme, and holds on to it. And so they have a predisposition to obesity. There it is. Yeah. So that wasn't whatever.
No, I get
and I think that the world would be a better place if we acknowledged that free will is an illusion, because our entire justice system is kind of based on that.
Based on the opposite.
Yes, that you are responsible for your actions, no one else. But we're completely ignoring the fact that the environment shapes who we are and what we become. And so the person that should be on trial should be our society. Joker memes imminent. Because we created this being. If someone shoots up a school, it's kind of the least fault of the person who shoots up the school, and more the factors that contributed to this person being created. Yeah. And so the environment where they were neglected or abused, or were reading a lot of alt-right memes on the internet, and had an environment that allowed them to continue to have that mentality thrive, and their parents had a gun, and so they just grabbed it and acted upon this one urge on this one day. Everything led up to that. Everything. And so to think that, this person is just a bad person, you are just bad, doesn't do anything for us, because we're not going to keep preventing this from happening, because it really is everything else's fault if we want to assign blame. And so what we should do, instead of locking someone up forever and they never see the light of day again, we should try and observe what factors in their environment led to this happening, and try and reform them so that they can actually go back into society, hopefully a society that we have now made better, so that they can go into and thrive and make the world a better place, rather than go off of this assumption that it's your actions and your behavior that led to this thing happening, when it's not. We are all victims of our environment and our genes. I don't get to choose how dark my skin is. I don't get to choose how much money I grow up with. That's not my fault. But we can create an environment where sort of mobility is possible, so that someone who is unfortunately born in a resource scarce environment is able to get to a place where they are no longer resource scarce. And that's up to us. Keep going.
I'm gonna.
And if you have any like side questions on top of that, please.
Any side questions I have come up with while you were going really come from me wanting to have a debate about that whole thing. And this is not currently the time for that. So
sure.
I'm really finding it interesting to just go really deep with a lot of this stuff and see what you actually think. Because,
please.
I feel like you did it, and I'm
okay.
Where are we at? How do you determine what good behavior is?
Very carefully.
Speaking of,
I know.
Speaking of very carefully,
there's a cat on a speaker.
My cat is on a speaker, and they regularly knock these over.
Very carefully. It's somewhere in between Kant and I guess Sam Harris.
Okay, so I've only seen the first season and a half of The Good Place, so you're gonna have to explain to me who Kant is.
Yeah, Immanuel Kant was a moral philosopher who developed this thing called the categorical imperative, kind of a way of observing morality in a objective manner rather than a subjective manner. Mm-hmm. And so he did a lot of rigorous, just like thought experiments and studying the world and everything, and kind of arrived at a few different rules. But the categorical imperative basically says, if you can't apply it to everyone, then it shouldn't be allowed for you. And so the first example of this is lying. There's a cat on the speaker again.
I'm just going to keep an eye out.
Right. The first example of this I always use is lying, because if everyone lies, basically if lying becomes a rule rather than an action, mm-hmm. Then if everyone lies all the time, then there's not actually any concept of truth anymore. And it's actually a paradox. So you can't have lying without truth. And if you lie all the time, then it can't continue to exist, which is pretty funny. But also it would make for a very difficult world to live in, because there's no way of knowing what
I'm almost certain there's like an Asimov short story about that, or some equivalent sci-fi.
But you can apply that to killing. If it becomes a rule to kill, then everyone kills each other, and then there's no one left to follow the rule. Darn it. And so
missing the part where this leads into some form of morality.
Yeah, well, so I use that as, kind of a foundation for a lot of morality, because it in what ways can I make the world a better place? If everyone did this thing, would it make the world a better place?
Okay.
Yeah. Which is kind of where it bleeds into Sam Harris. He wrote a book called The Moral Landscape. And basically he starts with this foundation, which is what is the worst, the most amount of suffering for the maximum amount of time for every person. Mm-hmm. Just imagine the worst thing ever for everyone. at all times. And then we can move up from there. So like just literal, like biblical hell, just the worst, and then keep going up. Now there doesn't have to be like an actual description of what that worst thing is, because you can like kind of measure in a way of just what would be like maximum awful. And so you can just move up from there. And so anything that moves us closer to that is bad. And anything that moves us away from that is good. So there's a range of things, which is why it's a landscape rather than like a line graph, because there are good things in some areas. There are peaks in the moral landscape and there are valleys in the moral landscape. And so there are things that are better and worse than others, but it's not necessarily like everything.
There's a whole mess of stuff in the middle that might change based on situation or just isn't very clear or whatever. Yeah.
And so whenever I determine what is good or bad, it's not just what I feel is good. I do, whenever it comes to tougher questions, I do tend to go towards these sort of moral calculations to try and determine that. This is why I say I'm a philosophy hobbyist. I
love it. No, that's great.
I think about these things a lot, because if it's not important to everyone else, at least it's important to me, and I can at least feel justified in my moral decisions or moral stances. Because it's valuable, and I may not have the power to influence the world in one way or another, but if I make these sorts of decisions with everyone in mind, then hopefully I'm at least making my corner of the universe a little bit better.
Yeah.
And hopefully I can influence other people to make their corners of the universe better. And it kind of goes into that whole interconnected web thing. You are God. That the better we all are, the closer to a peak in the moral landscape is. So yeah. There are cats doing cat things.
It's okay. No, I'm trying to quietly shoo them away without interrupting things too much. I like it.
It's making up a good character in the podcast. It's not just you and me talking. It's also you and me, and there are also cats.
So you ask the question, how do we reduce division? I want to first ask, what is the division?
So there's like this weird kind of spiritual, I don't know, goal. It's kind of galactic in scope, which is essentially that in the same way that our cells interact with each other to create to create organs, and then those create what make up our human bodies. In the same way, I think that we can reach those same scales above the species level. And so with relationships and then communities and then going on and above to where in a weird way, and this, you could call it the singularity, but it's much more than technology, in a way that we can be so interconnected that if a leaf falls off a tree in China, we are sharing that experience too. Or that a galaxy being sucked into the black hole is another movement of the arm of the universal organism that we are all one part of. So
that's big, but It's yeah.
And so
the division is not that.
Yeah, the division is everything that keeps us away from each other and makes our own worlds smaller and in that way worse. Being disconnected isn't inherently bad, but we can see the benefits of being connected and having a community that we all thrive in. And humans have evolved to be more so in communities than not. Mm-hmm. And so, which is why whenever a baby isn't touched, it dies. It's what's called failure to thrive. And because humans are literally so in need of other humans that our bodies will just be like, nope, not doing it today. Sorry. I'll just stop wasting my time and just go on to the next baby because this one's not going to do it.
Yeah.
So we need each other at a like core biological level. And so that the way that I'm just going to focus on me and mine and fuck you over there, that doesn't matter to me. It does, though, because the more that you allow whole communities of people to be treated badly or subjugated, then that'll reflect on you whenever there's like a drive-by and someone shoots your kid. There's a whole slew of things contributing to this network of humanity and even larger that we are all affected by each other. Mm-hmm. So we should try and reduce that division.
How?
There we go. We need to talk to each other in a way that isn't presumptuous. We need to stop having bad faith conversations to where I already assume what you're going to say and I'm going to try and pigeonhole you into this thing, or I'm asking you this question so that I can gotcha and then just point out how bad you are and it makes me look good. Or this thing only benefits me, and if it doesn't benefit you, well, I don't care because I'm just living my life. I don't think we're making each other better with those types of conversations. And I think that in a way that by having this podcast is another way of having more conversations in the world where people listen to each other, listen to different perspectives, where I listen to different people and listen to different perspectives, so that I'm not stuck in my own ways, that I listen to different things. And so it becomes much more united. Mm-hmm. And so we just need to talk and listen to each other. Like actually listen, not just hear someone talking while you're preparing your next sentence in your mind, but really talking and then empathizing. I'm kind of an empath, which is why like moral philosophy is probably so important to me, is because I feel it whenever other people feel it. And it hurts me too. And I don't like that. I don't like feeling bad.
Yeah.
And so, I cry at movies, and, sometimes I'll listen to sad songs and cry. 'Cause I feel it. And so we need to really feel each other's emotions, put each other in the place of another person. And even with people that we might consider adversaries, more Sam Harris, he has this concept called steel manning. So, what straw manning is like you make this straw example of what you think your enemy's argument is, and then you tear it down.
Yeah. Like the meme thing. Or
the what?
The meme thing. I mentioned you posted an opinion that maybe somebody does or does not even hold, and then you argue against it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then steel manning is actually doing the opposite of that. You try and put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're arguing against and say their argument so well that they would agree with it. Mm-hmm. It's like, is this what you're saying? And if you explain it and they go, yes, that is what I'm saying. Cool. Now I'm going to tear that down. But like, you don't have to tear it down. But having the conversation so that what it does is it shows the other person that you're actually where they are. Mm-hmm. And that we can all grow by putting ourselves in that position so that we can really understand what the other person is feeling or thinking. And so we need to have conversations and we need to feel for each other. That wouldn't hurt. And doing psychedelics probably wouldn't hurt either. Yeah.
Okay, Joe Rogan. I'm kidding.
I have never done psychedelics. I've never even been drunk. So, but the research shows that it does help in feeling a little bit more connected. So
if anybody wants to get Santiago acid,
yeah,
he's super down for it.
We did not condone this on the podcast, NSA, but this is all a joke. All of this is fiction. None of this is real. Time is a flat circle. Here's Tom with the weather once again.
I'm going to ask you this question only because I know I understand it poorly, and I want you to answer it and in the sense in that way explain it to me. How do you live with or against the selfishness that pervades American culture?
Yeah. So it seems like a given that American culture is a bit more of that, like, I need to worry about me and mine, and then like, fuck you. Which is the what's the name of the flag? Gadsden flag? The snake says don't tread on me? Yeah, okay. And there's a whole lot of intense selfishness or individualism in the sense of all commercials are trying to make you feel better. And if you buy our product, you will be a better person. Or the people that we value in society are the people that have a lot of money or are really famous, but we don't take the time to acknowledge that that doesn't necessarily make them a good person. Mm-hmm. And so fame does not equal good. Money does not equal good. And that's the message that America is giving us and has been giving us for a long time. And so
to the question of how do you live with or against it?
Right. So I live with it in the sense that I do still have to play the game because I am a musician and I don't get to rewrite the rules. So I do live with it, and I do have to kind of put out this message of like, cool, look at me, I'm making cool stuff. You should buy it. You should pay for it. You should listen to it. And so, hi, friend. Wait, let's see if we can get more purrs in here.
He'll purr if you pet him. Stop petting him, he stops purring.
We'll see. Okay. And so, I am playing the game because I don't have a choice to not. There's the silly argument with like, people who are communists and are like talking about, oh, well, the world would be a better place if we like, had the what is it? Seize the means of production. That's the phrase. And then the pedantic, like, oh, well, you're arguing against capitalism and yet you live in a capitalist society. You're on Facebook on an iPhone right now. It's like, yeah, I don't have a choice about that, man. Like, I didn't get to choose the world that I was living in. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I have to play the game. I need to do a little bit of that. And yeah, there are times when, like, you know, you might need to ask for a raise at a job because you got like a wife and kids at home or something. And so, yeah, you got to be pragmatic in that sense. And that's how I have to be at times. And yeah, there are times where I don't like that. And then against, in that I have things like this podcast where I put messages like this out and say, don't be selfish, talk to each other, get to know each other, love each other. And so I want to be a counter to the message of, if you worry about yourself, everything will sort itself out, and all those other people, you don't have to give a fuck about them. That's not true. That stuff affects you, and the more that you harden yourself against that empathy, the worse that you'll make it on everybody else. And then that'll reflect on your relationships with other people. And maybe people won't want to be around you, or maybe people won't want to do business deals with you, or whatever it might be if you want to apply it to that context. But we do need to be more interconnected. And I want to push back against the message that says that if you worry about yourself only, you're going to thrive, because it's not necessarily true. You want to reach down and grab that phone?
No, I'm thinking I'm tempted to, there's a lot in here that I just want to talk to you about after.
Sure.
Or on another occasion.
Yeah.
And I'll probably just have to listen to this episode and then write it down. Because it's coming out the day after tomorrow. So,
yeah. We're recording this on Tuesday. I'm putting it up on Thursday. Yeah. It's great.
What are you optimistic about for our future?
I think that there's a lot to be scared about, obviously. But in that same vein, with all of the shit going wrong, there's a whole lot for people to be motivated to do something about it. Mm-hmm. Does it necessarily have to be some sort of rebellion? No, but we can do something about it. And I think that the more injustices there are, the more people are speaking up about it. There's a lot of vocal racists nowadays, but that's really just because, like, we're getting really good at, like, getting rid of racists. And so they're scared. They're running, and they're in their final death throes and trying to be like, no, we still matter. Remain white, America. But, like, America's never been white. Mm-hmm. It's always been all of us. And if you go far back in your genealogy, you're going to see that, like, everyone's mixed.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter your race, but that's just on the race front. But, like, we really are getting better at this. There are ways in which we're getting worse, sure. But, you know, people are really scared about technology, but I think that technology is a tool, and the way that we use that tool really matters. You can use a tool to build you can use a hammer to build a house, mm-hmm. or you can use it to bash someone's brains in. You can use Facebook to share a whole bunch of lies, or you can use it to set up an event and have a housewarming party for someone. You know, like, either way, you can, like, it's not Facebook's fault, although to there are things that are Facebook's fault, definitely, but it's not Facebook's fault.
That's a whole other.
Yeah, that's a whole thing. But it's not the technology's fault that it's being used that way. But we need to create an environment in which these tools can be used to make the world a better place. And I think we're working towards that. And I think that in general, we're really moving towards that. And it's not an excuse to like be complacent and be like, oh yeah, it's coming. So, just wait for it. No, you got to work for it too.
Yeah.
But like, we're moving towards there, and it's pretty cool.
Cool. Do you believe humans are evil by nature?
I don't. I'm a little bit more tabula rasa, as I can't remember who was the philosopher that thought of that term or coined the term. But it means blank slate.
Yeah.
And yeah, kind of what I've been saying about how we are shaped by our genes and our environment. We aren't necessarily selfish. And in fact, the research kind of seems to show the opposite. That, yeah, you can look at how selfish people are now, but like that's because we're living in this society, Joker memes again. And we're sort of creating these types of people that are benefiting from being selfish. But if we looked at how humans evolved through all of prehistory rather than the very recent post-agricultural society, we realize that like, oh, look, we've been like very egalitarian communities for a very long time, for longer than we've ever been society. And so humans actually really care about each other, which is once again why if you don't touch a baby, it dies. It's really important to us. If you get shut in a room, that's why like solitary confinement is like really morally awful, because you're not just doing something like, mentally to this person. You're like physically, biologically affecting their capacity, because it literally affects us on a physical level. Yeah. So yeah, we let some love in, and more will come out. Yeah.
Cool. What makes you content?
Everything. I think that
wonderful.
Yeah, I think that there's always something to enjoy, to be content about. I have a cat on my lap, and it's warm and adorable. And this is nice. I'm having a conversation with one of my best friends, and like not everything in my life is perfect. No, but like this is really nice. And could it get nicer? Sure. And I'm working towards that too. But are things nice? Yeah, they are. And this is good. Everything makes me content. Music is really nice. And so I put a lot of time and effort into that, into making it, into listening to it. Talking to other humans is nice. And that makes me really happy and content. My wife makes me very happy and content. I'm excited to get to finally move in with my wife so that our passive time is spent together rather than apart. And video games are fun, and whenever I get the chance to play them, I get to have new experiences in a simulated world that I don't get to have in the real world. And all these things are super nice, and lots of other things are super nice, and I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's awesome. So there's a trio of questions all in a row. That's the first one that are asking a very similar question, but just get like more aggressive.
Yes.
So are you content? That's a great, beautiful, positive answer. When will you be satisfied? Which I like to read as, when will you be satisfied?
Right. Both, never, and I already am.
You can't leave a short answer. We're already 2 hours into this video. Right. We got to keep going.
So obviously there's a lot of work to do. We got stuff that needs doing. I've got music that needs creating. I've got other people's souls to put into binary and then share again through audio. That's a very funny way of describing the podcast. There's stuff to be done. There's goals to be met. We need to make the world a better place. It's a lot. There's a lot of work to do, not just for me, but for everyone. And so, yeah, we don't need to be complacent in where we are in our own life. We need to make the world better for lots of other people because there are people suffering and there's nothing that they can do about it, and we can help. Maybe not you directly, but there are things that we can do to nudge the rest of the world in that direction. And every little thing helps. If you think that something that you're doing isn't helping, keep going. It's a wide, angry world out there at the moment. And it seems like sometimes there's not a lot that we can do to shape it, but we are. Everyone is interconnected and we're making it happen. So yeah, don't be satisfied with the way the world is because there's a lot to do. However, this is also really nice. So you can't just do the previous thing I just said all the time. You'll explode. So you have to take a moment and slow down and stop and enjoy where you are. Yeah. And you can... Here's something else that makes me content, actually. I really love being at a stoplight and looking over to the car next to me and seeing someone is just jamming out. And that, there's this concept that my brother has made his handle Moodicious, and it's a Buddhist concept called mudita, which is happiness from other people's happiness or vicarious joy.
It's like the opposite of Schadenfreude.
Yeah, exactly. And that moment of mudita makes me yes, other people enjoying music. This is why I do what I'm doing. And yeah, I'm satisfied. You need to accept where you are and live with it. It's okay. Yeah. You're going to be fine. We're right here. Yeah. And this is the only moment that you get to accept this moment. So take joy in it. Be satisfied. It's nice. And then get back to work, you lazy bum.
It's kind of, there are two definitions to the word satisfied. There's kind of, do you have enough? Or are you done? Yeah. And the answer to one of those is yes. The answer to the other one is no. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. That's good. So it's always enough and it's never enough.
Yeah. It's always enough and you're never finished.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. What's the point?
Yes.
Don't do that. Dylan already did that to me once. You don't get to do that to me.
We are the universe experiencing itself. You are the most important entity that has ever existed because you only exist in this finite moment at this point in space-time. And it's really important. You are infinitely unique. And that was an adorable sneeze from a small cat. And so you are the point. in many senses of the word point. But yeah, we are experience. You are an experience. And so, as far as I can tell, this is the only time I've got. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's an afterlife. It doesn't seem like it. Doesn't seem likely.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to do everything I can with what I have here, what I know I have. And cool. Like, I can do a lot. You can do a lot. And so we can make the most out of what we have and do great things with it. There's lots of other humans in history that have done great things. And even though your circumstances are different, you're also just a human being. Yeah. They were also just a human being. So it's not like there's some magical state that they reached to be able to do these things. You can too. So do it. It's cool. Mm-hmm. And if not, and if you don't get anything done, that's okay too. Did you enjoy it? Mm-hmm. Cool. Are you satisfied? Try to be. Because this is okay. I guess that's the point. Okay. Experience the love, the sea of love that is all around us. Bathe in it. It will never end. It's beautiful. Enjoy it.
Nice. I feel like you could take the last half of this, you going through everything post what is the role of spirituality, and edit it into like a manifesto, of the Santiago manifesto.
Sure.
You know, starting to wind it down.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for people?
Really, it's the three things.
We'll get there.
Yeah, right. but that is my advice. Mm-hmm. It's that love never fails. You're like, there's nothing that you can do that won't be solved by caring more and putting more love into the world.
So I actually want to, you just gave me an idea. I want to put a little bit of a different spin on this.
Okay.
I really want you to go into detail on just tell me what your three things are. You end every single podcast with them.
Yeah.
But then I want you to tell me why.
Yeah.
So what are the three things?
Love never fails. It's going to be okay. I might be wrong.
Roll credits.
Yeah, love never fails. It comes from the Bible. The ring that I now have on my right hand, it used to be on my left hand, is the quote from the Bible. It's 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8. Love is patient, love is kind. Some other nonsense in between. Love never fails. When I was a child, I thought like a child. The rest of the verse doesn't really matter because the important thing to grasp out of it is that love never fails. To me, love is the meaning of life. I say the stuff like we are the universe experiencing itself, and that in itself is love. I wrote some poems a while back, and I had them played. I wrote some poems, and they were recorded by myself and some others. And I had their voices, and I manipulated them to make these poems a bigger experience. It's the Heart Suite. I haven't put it out yet because I need some album art, and there's some things that Sable wants to re-record. So, yeah. But that was probably the greatest capitulation of love never fails that I could put into the universe. It was like a very religious thing that I could put into the world with myself. But in my time of experiencing Catholicism and Christianity, the thing that held me together was trying to love more. I didn't fall out of Catholicism because I was full of hate or I was angry at the church. It was that I wanted to love more. And the rules and guidelines that the Bible set up for me weren't allowing me to love more. And I needed to love more. I couldn't not love more. And so I believe truly that love is the meaning of life. The universe is overflowing with love, and it's showing us that because we exist to experience it, and we are capable of loving, and it loves us back.
Okay.
It's going to be okay, both in the biggest expanse of the words and the smallest. I kind of said it earlier. You are the only you that has ever existed and will only exist and will exist right here, right now. And that's very important. And that's good. That's okay. Everything that you are is right where it needs to be. These two cats that are lying down right next to me being adorable, that's right where they need to be. And that's okay. And then in the bigger sense is that we are also infinitely kind of insignificant. The universe is really, really big. Like I can't begin to describe or fathom just how big the universe is. Listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about it sometime. Like it is so big. Or Carl Sagan, the pale blue dot one. That's a really good one too. That we really just are so small and so tiny in the vast expanse, not just space of the universe, but time. The universe is 13 billion years old or something like that. That's a lot of time. Like we are a tiny speck, a tiny blink. You don't even notice it if it goes by on a clock. That's how small everything that's happening in our life is. And so that means that like the worst thing that you're experiencing right now is temporary. And you can either writhe and clench your teeth and be, oh, this is the worst thing ever. Or you can accept it and know that this is temporary. And that's okay. No matter what you can do, you don't even have to accept it because it's going to be true anyways. It's going to be okay. Yeah.
But
I might be wrong. The lyrics to Sour Grapes by Bucifer is probably the biggest, the best way that I can encapsulate it, actually. I'll pull it up, but I'll vamp on this. It also comes from science. The principle of the scientific method is that I think this is true. Let's test that. And you can either go, oh, turns out that is true. Or you can go, oh, that is not true. Let's try something else then. And that whole principle allows us to keep moving, keep evolving, because we don't know everything. And it keeps getting proven time and again that anytime anyone is like, this is it, this is totally it, we got it, totally, fully certain, this is it. And it's like, actually, you got this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. And it's like, dang it. So here's the quote from Sour Grapes. Now I have it pulled up. Fear not the movement of the heavens above or the earth below, for change is what we are, my child. Righteous are those who look up and sway with the wind, who look down and dance with the shifting of the soil, who swim with the movement of the tides, who seek the truth around them and discover that we are and have always been in paradise, the reflections of heaven on earth. Yeah.
Someone should put that on a religion.
Yeah, maybe. Everything is changing all the time, and we don't know where to stand. That's because you're not supposed to just stand there. You're supposed to move and keep moving. Everything is changing all the time. There's no real solid foundation to stand on because, like I said earlier, we are a blink in the vast expanse of the universe, and something else is going to come along and be the thing. And you can either be stubborn and sit in your kingdom of wrongness, or you can move along and be a nomad and experience new experiences and challenge the premises that you held, because you know what? Our senses are pretty limited, and we're only seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, and feeling things. Among other things, there's actually other senses that we don't talk about enough, but there's like empathic senses and like a fraction of feeling, which is like temperature. But it's not really quite just the feeling of something. It's the feeling of cold or hot. Anyways, but we only have these things. And there's so much else going on in the universe that like we as humans can't even begin to fathom, and nor will we ever begin to fathom. There's so many things that you will never know. Cool. Bring you back to it's going to be okay, but also keep moving and find out what else there is that you don't know. And even more so also with another Maynard James Keenan quote, gosh dang it.
People are going to think we're such nerds.
Yeah, I know.
Like, oh, they're those people.
Yeah, but spiral out, keep going. Overthinking, overanalyzing separates the body from the mind, withering my intuition, missing opportunities, and I must feed my will to feed this moment, urging me to cross the line, reaching out to embrace the random, reaching out to embrace whatever may come. Spiral out, keep going.
There you go. That was all very well and good. We have a much bigger question to discuss. Cake or pie?
Pie.
You mean you're right?
Yeah.
We are not the two people to have this conversation.
Sure, yeah, we agree very much. And usually whenever people say cake, I am surprised, but I also respect their preference, but also acknowledge that they have bad taste. And,
bad.
Yeah. But I just keep that to myself and let them enjoy their cake, because there's so much wasted flavor in just the air that is inside of a cake that could just be filled with more flavor that is contained in a pie. Mm-hmm. So
I did recently, I asked a friend this question.
Yeah.
And he gave me the best counter I have yet heard.
Cookies?
No.
Okay.
Have you ever had a king cake?
I don't think so.
It's a traditional New Orleans cake.
Sure, yeah.
That gets made around Mardi Gras.
Right.
And I have not tried one, but I've been assured with a great deal of confidence that it would change my mind about the cake versus pie thing. So I need to try king cake. Okay, and you also apparently need to try king cake.
Sure, yeah.
The only place in town that apparently makes a good one is Ingrid's.
Okay.
So go to Ingrid's.
Yeah,
Get a king cake.
We'll see about that.
Because you might be wrong.
Yeah, no, I could be wrong. And yeah, there could be something that totally shakes my foundation on this pie thing. But
so far it hasn't happened.
Right. Like even like pies that I don't like as much, I would probably rather have than like
most cakes. Even a real good cake.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like What's the blandest pie?
A cream pie.
Yeah, or like pumpkin pie. That's probably an unpopular opinion. I don't like pumpkin pie very much.
Have you ever had just a cream pie?
Where it's essentially just like whipped cream.
They're not very exciting.
Right,
and
sure.
it is a pie.
Yeah, it is a pie. Versus
probably
like
rather eat
a vanilla like white sponge cake.
That's really just getting as close as you can to cake in pie form.
Right.
Yeah.
I would take the cream pie over the bland white cake.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Not sorry. Yeah. And I mean, again, like I don't like pumpkin pie that much, but there are times where like I'll still eat the pumpkin pie.
Because at least you have the contrast of like filling to crust.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And then the other corollary is always cheesecake is a pie.
Cheesecake is a pie.
Yeah. That shouldn't even be a discussion. Cheesecake is a pie. It's just a misnomer.
Yeah.
I don't know who decided
the word
call
cake
it.
Gets used for a lot of things that aren't cake.
Right. Yeah.
Beefcake.
Yeah.
You know, some people might say Santiago's a beefcake, but you're not going to cover them frosting and cut pieces up for your holiday birthday party or whatever.
What does beefcake mean?
I think it's just like a hot dude.
Oh, okay.
Like, oh, you're a beefcake.
Oh, okay. I thought it was more of like a bigger hot dude. Like,
Sure, maybe.
Yeah, so I don't think I meet the height requirement.
You don't meet the height requirement for beefcake.
I'm below the weight class.
It was below the weight class.
But yeah, I mean, the other thing about it is the cheesecake, like cheese pie sounds weird and like
different. A cheese pie probably exists, but it's a very different thing than a cheesecake.
Right. Or it sounds like a euphemism for something. So yeah. So I don't know. Like, I'd rather not.
Yeah.
But it's fine that cheesecake is a cake. You can have that one. There's so many other great pies. So like, cool.
Yeah. I mean, I never stopped cream pies, but
yeah. Right. And that's
we don't have to leave that in the podcast.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can everyone knows what that is, and we're just not going to talk about it.
Okay, cool. Awesome. This is the part where you usually ask people to plug their stuff.
Yeah.
I went to a little event last night called Electric Pizza, where there was electric music and pizza, and I may have heard a rumor, a whisper on the wind, if you will, that there is a record.
Yes, there is in fact an album out. It's called Too Many Damn Cables, and it's streaming on all the platforms. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Music.
Who's it by?
It's by Power Cycle, a experimental electronic trio that is J.R. Edwards, Breck McGough, and myself, Santiago Ramones. I kind of happen to be the manager of Power Cycle, so if you have any inquiries about Power Cycle, you can just contact me. And yeah, Too Many Damn Cables. It's an album of completely improvised music. It comes from the recordings of rehearsals that we were, practicing for other Electric Pizza concerts, but then stuff would happen in between and we would be noodling around and then someone else would join in and then it would turn into like a 15-minute thing. And we're like, whoa, that was cool. And that's the album. Some tracks are like 2 minutes long and it was just a short little ditty. And other times I think the longest track on the album is 14 minutes long, which goes through like a whole bunch of phases of things and feelings. And it's definitely background music. Like I don't expect people to like sit down in a dark room and like listen to the whole thing because your mind's going to wander. It's definitely background music. It's ambient music, but there will be lots of times where you're going to pull your thoughts back in and go, how do we get here? Like, I thought we were in like weird electronic beat thing. What happened to that? Because now we're in like Arabian scale wailing, like, and so that's a lot of the album is how do we get here? Mm-hmm. This is cool.
Got there by too many damn cables.
Yeah. There's a lot of cables. Yeah, you saw our setup last night.
I did. Yeah, there were many complaints on stage about there being too many damn cables.
As we danced around trying to get our headphone cables not to intertwine as we moved around from piece to piece. So yeah,
it was good. I am not what you would call a connoisseur of electronic music, but I enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you.
So, what else you got going on? Anything?
Well, March 2nd is the next Electric Pizza, and there actually won't be too many damn cables there because it's electroacoustic music. So it'll be a track, and the players will play the music that's on the page. So like normally people in a classical world would have an accompanist on piano and they would play the thing down the page and the person would play their instrument down the page. But instead it's with electronic music and the accompaniment is a track. So as I keep saying, we're dragging the UCO School of Music kicking and screaming into the 21st century.
Awesome.
And so, yes, we've heard Beethoven for the 10 millionth time, but like he's also been dead for a long time and there's new stuff going on. So like, let's get some of that up in here.
Awesome.
Yeah. And cause we are alive and we can do this thing while we can. And then maybe when we die, other people will find it and be like, whoa, this is super cool. And be way more popular after we die or something. Cause that seems like that's how it goes. It's not my goal.
I mean, however popular you wind up being, it would still be pretty cool to be like,
yeah, like to posthumously leave a cooler legacy. Sure. Yeah. I would appreciate experiencing some of that now.
Yeah.
But I hope that I get to make people's lives better for years to come. And then whenever aliens who happen to also have both systems that work in binary that can be interpreted in the right way and
a perception of sound.
A perception of sound within 20 to 20,000 hertz, then hopefully they will also enjoy that music if they can fathom what music is. So, or maybe they'll just look at the arrangements of zeros and ones on
these arrangements of zeros and ones are dope as shit.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know what they experience things like, but hopefully these things are enjoyable to many different types of observers.
There you go.
What do you got going on?
Oh, the biggest thing right now is Dr. Pants.
Yeah,
is working on a record,
new album,
which is really, really cool. I'm enjoying that process immensely. We are playing the next Rock for Bernie show, which I could spend 5 minutes figuring out where it's at.
Right.
I could just say, get on Google or Facebook or whatever and search
find Dr.
Rock
Pants,
for Bernie or find Dr. Pants. Yeah. There's going to be a lot going on in Pantsland. So, that's the thing right now.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more of a Yang guy myself, but
I've heard
Bernie's pretty cool too.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into a whole thing about the politics. I am very happy to be playing Rock for Bernie, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that's the next thing up on my list. So.
Check out Dr. Pants. A lot of cool, fun songs, and a lot of also very interesting, introspective stuff too. So check it out.
Yep.
Is that all of your junk? I guess if you want to that Mac.
Yeah, I don't throw around my stuff as much, but I'm at Not That Mac on Instagram and Twitter. Yeah. Which I only use when I'm very sad. So don't necessarily go looking for my Twitter. Right. It's not a reflection of who I am as a person, I promise.
But very fun things happen whenever Drunk Mac is texting.
I only get on Twitter when I am sad and intoxicated.
Sure.
So, yeah. There you go.
Would you say that that's the truest form?
Not even a little bit.
Just
no,
the demon on the wrong shoulder.
Probably that. I think there's all kinds of ideas about like what intoxication does to you, where there's people who are like, oh, that's your truest self.
Probably not.
And there are other people who are like, well, you can't really blame people for what they do while drunk because that's not really you. You're drunk. And I don't really buy either of those things.
That's also a little
a little bit. I think. No, it just has a particular set of effects on a person. And
but they also decided to get drunk. So that is kind of on them. So their behavior is still on them.
Not even just the decision to get drunk, but you're still a person making decisions.
Exactly.
You just like have a fishbowl while you're making those decisions.
But what in the environment led up to that sort of thing? We got to judge the society for that too.
We can have a separate argument about free will. But yeah, this has been really good.
Yeah. Thank you for doing it. You're the first person that I was like, oh, episode 200 is coming up. I should probably do something for that. And so instead of trying to do something new, I did something old. For episode 100, Sable interviewed me. And in this way, I also asked any of the people who listen to the podcast, which wasn't many, to send in questions. But in this regard, you are a listener of the podcast, and so you are also the one asking the questions. So it's still kind of
I'd like to think I'm your biggest fan. Maybe not. I don't know.
But I appreciate it if you are. But you'll have to fight my mom for that status.
Oh, you know what? That's right. That's right. And your wife and who knows? Any number of other people have a much better claim to that. Here you go. We talked about how to start the podcast, and that was fun. We didn't really talk about how to end the podcast.
Right. Well,
I don't have 3 things.
Right. Well, we do the plugs. And do you want to say my 3 things, or do you just want me?
No,
to
those
say
belong to you.
Things?
I don't want to get tied up in your business.
Well, do you have at least a thing?
Not anything that I have put as much thought into as you have for your 3 things, and I can just throw it out there as like, this is my stamp.
Sure.
No, I'm not nearly that confident about anything. Okay.
So then let's just go with what advice do you have for people at this point in time?
I am on the back end of my life becoming a train wreck not too long ago, and it's just now becoming less of a train wreck. So I don't know that I'm in a place to give advice. And this is not a satisfying thing to put on the podcast, but it is where I am. I guess keep going. Just keep going. Do it anyway. Yeah. I mean,
I was telling you to give the advice anyway.
That's probably where I'm at right now is like, I don't know that I feel quite as optimistically about much, but I do know that right now the answer to a lot of these questions that we've talked about today is just keep going and do it anyway. Yeah. So I thought you were saying something different than what you were saying when you said it, but that's not a bad answer. Cool. Like whatever it is, just do it anyway. Keep going.